Commander Cole had spent 15 years serving in the United Earth Fleet, and he had seen many strange things during his time among the stars, but nothing had prepared him for what was happening right now. The alien vessel hung in orbit above Mars Colony 7 like a dark omen, and its obsidian hull reflected the distant sunlight in ways that seemed almost unnatural. For 3 full days, every attempt at communication had failed completely, and the crew of his ship was growing more nervous with each passing hour. Stood on the bridge of his starship called the Horizon, and he watched the holographic display with a growing sense of unease that he could not shake. His second-in-command, Lieutenant Grace Murphy, approached him with a tablet clutched tightly in her hands, and her face showed the same worry that everyone else was feeling. She told him that the aliens were sending a shuttle down and that their scans showed only a single occupant aboard the small craft. The crew members on the bridge exchanged nervous glances with each other because humanity had dreamed about first contact with alien life for centuries, but the reality of it felt nothing like the fantasies they had grown up with. When the fleet had first appeared 6 months ago, they had destroyed 3 Earth outposts without any warning or explanation, and thousands of innocent people had died in those attacks. Now, after weeks of complete silence, they suddenly wanted to talk, and nobody knew what to expect from this meeting. The alien shuttle docked with the Horizon with mechanical precision that showed just how advanced their technology truly was. Led a security team down to the hangar bay, and his hand rested near his sidearm because he did not know what was about to come through that airlock door. The airlock hissed open with a sound that seemed too loud in the tense silence, and a figure stepped through wearing sleek armor that seemed to absorb light itself. The helmet the alien wore was completely featureless, and it gave nothing away about the creature inside. The alien stood at nearly 7 feet tall and moved with a grace that suggested both incredible power and careful restraint at the same time. It carried no visible weapons but knew that meant absolutely nothing when dealing with a species this advanced. He announced himself as Commander Cole of the United Earth Fleet, and his voice remained steady despite his racing heart. He told the alien that its people had attacked humanity and that thousands were dead, and he demanded to know why they had come here now. The figure remained silent for a long moment and could feel the tension in the room building with every second that passed. Then slowly the armored hands reached up toward the helmet. The security team tensed immediately, and their weapons rose halfway up as they prepared for any kind of threat. The helmet came off with a soft click that echoed through the hangar bay. Felt the breath leave his lungs completely. She was unlike anything he had ever expected to see. Her skin held a faint violet hue that shimmered like moonlight dancing on calm water. Her eyes were large and luminous, and they were the of molten gold with tiny flecks of silver scattered throughout. High cheekbones framed a face of striking beauty that was almost painful to look upon directly. Long hair the of starlight cascaded past her shoulders and seemed to move slightly even though there was no breeze in the hangar. But it was her expression that caught him most of all and made him forget everything else for a moment. She looked at him with something he recognized immediately despite the alien features that should have made her completely unreadable. It was sorrow, deep and profound sorrow that seemed to weigh upon her like a physical burden. She introduced herself as Queen of the Empire, and her voice carried strange harmonics that seemed to resonate deep within his chest in a way he could not explain. She told him that she had come to end a war that should never have begun in the first place. She told him that she had come to beg humanity for forgiveness. Stood frozen in place, and his carefully prepared hostility began to crumble before those golden eyes that held so much sadness within them. He had expected arrogance from the aliens who had killed so many of his people. He had expected threats or demands or cold indifference to human suffering. He had not expected this beautiful queen standing before him looking like she carried the weight of entire worlds upon her shoulders. The security team looked to him for guidance, but found that he could not speak for several long seconds. Grace Murphy stepped forward and demanded to know why they should believe anything this alien had to say after what her people had done to humanity. It was a fair question, and was grateful that someone had asked it because his own mind seemed to have stopped working properly. Queen turned those golden eyes toward Grace, and she did not show any anger at the hostile tone. She simply as if she had expected exactly this kind of reception and had accepted it long before arriving here. She said that she understood their anger and that she would explain everything if they would allow her to speak. Finally found his voice again, and he ordered the security team to stand down but remain alert. He told the alien queen that she would have her chance to explain, but that he made no promises about what would happen after that. She accepted his terms with a gentle nod, and something in her eyes shifted when she looked at him again. In that moment before a single word of explanation had been offered, something shifted inside as well. It was something he would spend the rest of his life trying to understand, and something that would change the course of history for both their species. He did not know it yet, but his fate had become intertwined with this alien queen from the second she removed her helmet. He led her toward the conference room with the security team following close behind, and Grace walked beside him with questions burning in her eyes. She whispered to him that this could all be a trap, and that they should not trust this alien no matter how sincere she appeared. Knew she was right to be cautious, but something deep inside him told him that this queen was telling the truth. The walk to the conference room felt like the longest journey of his life, and every step brought more questions than answers. Why had she come alone, and why had she revealed her face so willingly when she could have kept the helmet on? Why did she carry such sorrow in her eyes, and why did looking at her make him feel things he had never felt before? He did not have answers to any of these questions, but he knew that he would find them soon enough. The fate of two civilizations hung in the balance, and somehow Cole found himself at the center of it all with an alien queen, whose face he could not get out of his mind. Queen was escorted to a secure conference room aboard the Horizon, and insisted on being present for the entire conversation despite the objections of some of his crew. Grace Murphy watched him with obvious concern as he took a seat directly across from the alien monarch, and she wondered what had come over her commander in the hangar bay. Forced hardness into his voice as he spoke to the Queen and reminded her that her people had murdered thousands of innocent humans. He told her that they had destroyed entire families and killed children who had done nothing wrong, and he demanded that she explain why this had happened. His words were harsh, but they needed to be because he could not afford to let his strange feelings cloud his. Folded her hands on the table and up close could see the faint patterns on her violet skin that swirled like living artwork. These patterns seemed to shift slightly whenever he looked directly at them, and he found himself fascinated by them in ways he did not fully understand. She began her explanation by telling them that the attacks on human colonies had not been authorized by her. She said that her brother Prince commanded a faction within the Empire that believed expansion through conquest was their only path to survival as a species. She explained that while she had been in a deep hibernation state recovering from a serious illness, her brother had seized control of the military council and launched the attacks without her knowledge or approval. Her eyes closed briefly as she spoke and saw genuine pain flicker across her alien features. She told them that by the time she had awakened from her healing sleep, the human outposts had already fallen and thousands were already dead. She said that had counted on humanity being weak and easily conquered like so many other species that had encountered before. Grace interrupted her with anger in her voice and told the Queen that her brother had been very wrong about humanity. She reminded that human forces had destroyed half of the attack fleet at the Battle of Titan, and that her people had learned the hard way that humans would not surrender easily. Slowly at this, and agreed that human resistance had surprised everyone in her empire. She said that they had encountered many different species during their long expansion across the galaxy, and that none of them had ever fought the way humans did. She told them that no other species had shown such incredible tenacity and such willingness to sacrifice themselves for each other. She looked directly at as she continued speaking, and he felt those golden eyes pierce through every emotional he had spent years building. She told him that her people were dying and that there orbited a sun that was slowly failing. She said that they had perhaps 2 centuries before their star collapsed completely and their entire civilization faced extinction. Prince believed that conquest was the only way to ensure their survival, but believed differently. When asked her what she believed in, she leaned forward slightly, and her voice took on a passionate quality that surprised him. She said that she believed in partnership and alliance rather than domination and conquest. She told him that humanity possessed something her own species had lost over millennia of building their vast empire. She said that humans still had hope and the ability to adapt and grow and change in ways that they had forgotten long ago. Her people were ancient and powerful beyond human comprehension, but they had become stagnant and frozen in their ways. They were dying in spirit just as surely as their sun was dying in the sky above there. They needed something new, and humanity represented everything her people lacked. She reached across the table slowly, and before could react, her fingers touched his hand gently. Her skin was cool and smooth, and the contact sent something like electricity running through his entire body. Grace tensed at this unexpected contact, but did not pull away because he could not make himself do so. Told him that she had studied his species ever since the first contact between their peoples. She had examined human art and music and literature and history with great interest. She said that humanity was capable of terrible destruction and cruelty, as their own history showed, but that humans were also capable of incredible beauty and compassion that amazed her. Her voice dropped to barely a whisper as she told him that she had never met anyone from any species who could make her feel the way she felt right now. Knew that he should pull away from her touch, and he knew that protocol demanded distance and suspicion and careful diplomatic. but he could not move and he could not look away from those shimmering golden eyes. He asked her how he could possibly know that this was not all some elaborate trick designed to weaken humanity before another attack. She smiled then, and it was a gentle expression that transformed her face into something even more beautiful. She told him that he could not know for certain, and that he could only choose to trust her or not. She said that this was the nature of all meaningful connection between thinking beings regardless of species. Human or they all had to take that leap of faith eventually if they wanted to form real bonds with others. The room fell silent after she finished speaking and realized that everyone was watching him and waiting to see what he would do next. Grace looked deeply worried, and the security officers seemed unsure of what was happening between their commander and this alien queen, but was looking only at, and something unspoken passed between them in that moment. He did not know yet what he was going to do, but he knew that his life had changed forever. This alien queen had reached across the vast gulf between their species and touched something inside him that he had not known existed. Whether she was telling the truth or lying he could not say, but he intended to find out. The fate of billions hung on the decisions made in this room, and Cole was only now beginning to understand the weight of that responsibility. News of Queen's arrival spread through human space like wildfire, and within hours everyone from Earth to the outer colonies was talking about the alien queen who had come to seek peace. The reaction among humanity was divided sharply between those who demanded her immediate arrest and execution, and those who saw this as an opportunity for peace that might never come again. Found himself in an impossible position because he had transmitted her offer to Earth Command, and now he had to wait while politicians and generals argued endlessly over the fate of two civilizations. The debates went back and forth for days, and nobody seemed able to agree on what should be done with the Queen. In the meantime, spent hours with learning about her people and their culture and their long history among the stars. She walked with him through the observation deck of the horizon, and they watched the stars drift past the windows in comfortable silence that felt natural despite how strange the situation truly was. She told him that his ship was remarkable and that its design showed it was built for exploration rather than conquest. She said that this told her much about the true nature of his species and what humans valued most deeply, admitted that humanity had done plenty of conquering in their own history and that they were not innocent of the crimes she was trying to avoid. She acknowledged this truth but said that humans had learned from their mistakes and changed their ways over time. She told him that the ability to change was what mattered most and that her own people had forgotten how to do this long ago. They had remained essentially the same for 10,000 years, and while they might be perfect in many ways, they were also static and frozen and slowly dying. Before could respond to this, alarms suddenly blared throughout the ship, and the peaceful moment shattered in an instant. Grace's voice came over the intercom system with urgent news that made everyone's blood run cold. She reported that warships were dropping out of hyperspace nearby, and that their identification signals showed they belonged to Prince's fleet. The enemy vessels were demanding that the Horizon surrender the Queen immediately or be destroyed without mercy. Her expression hardened when she heard this news, and she told that her brother had come to silence her permanently. She said that if succeeded in killing her, then war between their species would become inevitable, and millions would die in the fighting that followed. Her voice remained calm, but could see the fear hidden beneath her composed exterior. Made his decision in an instant without hesitation or doubt. He grabbed the intercom and announced to all hands that they should report to battle stations immediately. He declared that the Horizon would not surrender anyone to these attackers, no matter what threats were made against them. The battle that followed would become legendary in both human and history and would be studied by military scholars for generations to come. The Horizon was badly and completely outmatched by warships that had conquered dozens of worlds across the galaxy. Prince's fleet had more firepower and more advanced weapons, and by all reasonable calculations, they should have won easily. But Cole was not fighting for territory or resources or political advantage. He was fighting for something he barely understood but could not deny, and that gave him strength that the enemy could not measure or anticipate. Human tactics immediately confused the commanders who had expected a straightforward battle. Instead of forming defensive lines like every other species, they had fought the Horizon darted and weaved through the nearby asteroid field using the rocks as cover. The human ship moved in unpredictable patterns that no computer could anticipate, and the gunners struggled to track their target. When reinforcements from Earth arrived, they came not in orderly formation, but in apparent chaos that baffled the enemy commanders. Each human captain improvised their own approach and adapted to the changing battle conditions in real time. They found weaknesses in the rigid attack patterns and exploited them ruthlessly before moving on to find new opportunities. watched the battle unfold from the bridge of the horizon, and her eyes grew wide with wonder at what she was witnessing. She had never seen anything like this in her long life, and she found herself breathless with amazement. She told that his people fought as individuals within a unified whole, and that they sacrificed for each other without hesitation or complaint. She asked him how this was possible, because it contradicted everything her people believed about effective military organization. Gripped the command console tightly as the ship shuddered from a near miss that rocked everyone on the bridge. He told her that this was simply how humanity worked, and that they were messy and chaotic and completely unpredictable. But he added that when humans came together for something they truly believed in, then nothing in the entire galaxy could stop them. The battle raged for hours and losses mounted on both sides, but the human forces refused to give up or retreat. They took terrible casualties, but they kept fighting with a ferocity that shocked the attackers. One human cruiser rammed an enemy vessel to protect the horizon, and the crew died knowing they had saved their commander and the queen he was protecting. Prince's flagship exploded in a massive bloom of fire and debris when 3 human ships coordinated a desperate attack against it. The death of their leader demoralized the remaining ships, and they retreated into hyperspace rather than continue the fight. Humanity had won against impossible odds, and the victory sent a message across the galaxy that would not be forgotten. Stood on his damaged bridge surrounded by exhausted crew members, and he looked at with new understanding in his eyes. She looked back at him, and for the first time since they had met her expression held something other than sorrow. She was looking at him with hope. In the weeks that followed, the Battle Queen broadcast a message to her entire empire explaining the truth about her brother's unauthorized attacks and calling for peace with humanity. She told her people that Prince had acted alone and against her wishes, and that his aggression had been a terrible mistake that cost many lives on both sides. Half of the fleet defected to her cause immediately and pledged their loyalty to their true queen. The other half retreated to distant systems on the edge of the empire and remained there without leadership or direction. A brief civil war broke out among the as loyalists clashed with those who had supported aggressive expansion plans. The conflict was brutal but decisive, and when it finally ended, sat firmly on the throne of her people with no one left to challenge her authority. She had won back her empire, and now she was free to pursue the peace she had promised to humanity. Was invited to as the official ambassador of the human race, and he accepted though with a mixture of pride and nervousness. He had never imagined that he would walk on alien soil, but now he was about to visit a world that had existed for longer than human civilization itself. He walked through crystal towers that stretched miles into the purple sky above and through gardens where plants sang in frequencies that humans could barely perceive. Everything around him was beautiful beyond description, and the technology on display made humanity's greatest achievements look primitive by comparison. But everywhere looked he saw the same troubling thing. Emptiness that moved through their perfect world like ghosts going through motions that had lost all meaning centuries ago. Their faces showed no emotion, and their voices carried no passion, and they seemed more like machines than living beings. The contrast between this silent world and the vibrant chaos of human civilization could not have been more striking. Walked beside him through the imperial gardens, and she watched his face as he took in everything around them. She told him that now he understood what she had been trying to explain before. She said that her people had built paradise and found it completely hollow and meaningless. She explained that they had achieved a form of immortality through their advanced technology, and that some of her people had lived for thousands of years. But they had discovered that eternity without purpose was its own kind of death, and that living forever meant nothing if there was nothing worth living for. She stopped beside a fountain that flowed with liquid silver rather than water, and the strange light reflected off her violet skin in mesmerizing patterns. She told that when she first saw humans fighting for their lives at the Battle of Titan, she had felt something she had not experienced in 500 years. She had felt alive. Looked at this ancient queen who had lived longer than human civilization had existed, and she suddenly seemed fragile and vulnerable in a way that made his heart ache with unexpected emotion. He asked her what she truly wanted, and not what she wanted for her people, but what she wanted for herself personally. She was silent for a long moment, and the only sound was the gentle splash of silver liquid in the fountain beside them. Then she reached up and touched his face with cool fingers that traced along the line of his jaw with incredible gentleness. She told him in a whisper that she wanted to feel the way he felt. She wanted to love with the intensity that his species loved, and hope as humans hoped, and fear as humans feared. She wanted to live each moment as if it might be her last, because that was something her immortal people had forgotten how to do long ago. She said that she wanted what he had given her simply by existing, and when he asked what that was, she answered without hesitation. She told him that he had given her a reason to exist herself. Closed the distance between them, and when their lips met, he felt the vast gulf between their species collapse into nothing. She was ancient, and he was mortal with a lifespan that would seem like the blink of an eye to her. She was alien in ways he could never fully understand, and he was human with all the flaws and limitations that implied. But none of it mattered in that moment. All that mattered was this connection and this impossible love, that everything both their peoples thought they knew about the universe. She held him tightly, and he could feel her heart beating against his chest with a rhythm that was different from human hearts but somehow still familiar. When they finally separated, she looked at him with tears in her golden eyes, and he realized that she had not cried in centuries. He had given her back her emotions simply by loving her, and that was a gift more precious than anything in her vast empire. She told him that her advisors would think she had gone completely mad when they learned about this. A queen who loved a human and chose a mortal partner over the eternal duties of empire would seem insane to her people. Asked her if she regretted her choice, and she smiled at him with an expression of pure joy that transformed her face into something radiant. She told him that she did not regret it for a single moment, and that he had given her more life in these few months than she had experienced in 5 centuries of mere existence. She said that his people had given her people something they had forgotten they even needed. When he asked what that was, she answered simply, a future worth living for. They stood together in the alien garden beneath the purple sky, and both of them knew that everything had changed forever. 2 civilizations that should have been enemies were about to become something far more important to each other. The formal alliance between humanity and the Empire was signed on a massive space station orbiting Earth, and the ceremony was witnessed by billions of people across both civilizations. Representatives from every human nation and every world had gathered for this historic moment that would change the course of galactic history forever. Queen stood beside who had been promoted to admiral and appointed as the permanent liaison between their 2 peoples. They made an unusual pair, standing there together with her towering violet form next to his smaller human frame, but nobody who saw them could deny the obvious connection between them. The treaty they signed that day was unprecedented in the history of either species. Technology would be shared freely with humanity, including advances in medicine and energy production and space travel that would transform human civilization within a generation. In return, humans would help to relocate their population before their dying sun finally collapsed, and both species would work together to find new worlds where they could thrive side by side. But more than treaties and technologies, something deeper was being exchanged between the 2 civilizations. Human artists were invited to worlds, and they brought music and laughter and vibrant to silent crystal halls that had known only quiet contemplation for thousands of years. The ancient aliens watched human performers with wonder in their eyes, and some of them smiled for the first time in centuries. Scholars came to Earth and walked through human cities with expressions of amazement on their faces. They watched children playing in parks and couples on street corners and families gathering for meals together. They saw the chaos and noise and passion of human life, and they found themselves enchanted by it in ways they could not explain. Slowly, the ancient empire began to change in ways that nobody had predicted. The patterns on skin that had been dormant for millennia began to shift with emotion once again as the aliens rediscovered feelings they had suppressed for countless generations. Their faces became more expressive, and their voices began to carry passion, and their movements lost the mechanical precision that had made them seem like machines. Children were born among them for the first time in centuries because couples who had felt nothing for each other suddenly discovered love and desire and the wish to create families together. The immortal species had remembered why new life mattered and why the future was worth caring about. Stood on the observation deck of the space station, and they watched Earth turn slowly below them in all its blue and green beauty. The planet where humanity had been born looked so small from up here, but it had produced a species that had changed the destiny of an entire galactic empire. Leaned against him and told him that her advisors still thought she had gone mad. They could not understand why their queen would love a human whose lifespan was so short compared to her own. They could not comprehend why she had chosen a mortal partner over the eternal duties that her position demanded. Asked her if this bothered her, and she turned to face him with those golden eyes that had captured his heart from the very first moment. He saw that her eyes, which had once been so full of sorrow, now sparkled with something he recognized immediately. It was joy, pure and simple joy that radiated from her entire being. She told him that their opinions did not bother her at all, and that she did not regret her choices for even a single moment. She said that he had given her more real life in these few months together than she had experienced in 500 years of mere existence before meeting him. She told him that his people had given her people something that they had forgotten they even needed. When he asked what that something was, she answered with a smile that lit up her beautiful face. A future worth living for. Pulled her close to him and felt her heartbeat against his chest steady and strong despite all the biological differences that should have made this relationship impossible. He thought about everything that had happened since she first removed her helmet on his ship and revealed herself to him. Humanity had reached for the stars dreaming of alien contact for centuries, and they had found not the enemies they feared but kindred spirits who needed them just as much as they needed the ancient empire had reached across the void seeking salvation, and they had found not subjects to conquer but partners to grow alongside. Two species that were different in every measurable way had discovered the one truth that transcended all the barriers between them. Love in all its forms was the only force in the universe truly worth fighting for. It could bridge gaps that seemed impossible to cross and heal wounds that seemed too deep to mend and create hope where none had existed before. And sometimes, just sometimes, all it took was the removal of a helmet to change the fate of entire galaxies. One simple act of revealing oneself to another could set in motion events that would reshape civilizations and bring together peoples who had been strangers across the vast emptiness of space. And stood together watching the stars, and they knew that their love was just the beginning of something far greater than themselves. Their children would inherit a universe where humans and worked side by side, and future generations of both species would look back on this moment as the dawn of a new era. The queen who had come seeking forgiveness had found something far more precious than she had ever imagined, and the human commander who had fallen for her the moment she revealed her face had given both their peoples a gift beyond measure. Hope for tomorrow together.